Hello and welcome to Multiplicative Marketing. This is podcast number 1. I'm thrilled to be launching season 1 of Multiplicative Marketing, which aims to uncover the core principles that truly drive marketing success. We're going to have some epic conversations on effectiveness and evidence-based marketing and related concepts and principles. Our first guest is Heidi Brauer, one of South Africa's best known, most sought after and well-respected marketing speakers and thought leaders. She is also South Africa's one and only consulting brand mama. I'm delighted to introduce to you Heidi Brauer. Heidi, I'm a big fan of your work, from Comair, British Airways and Kulula to Hollard and now Heidi B&Co. For our listeners, please give us a brief introduction to yourself, your career, and how you ended up here. Give us a sense of who you are.
Thanks, Philip. And I'm absolutely honored to be your first guest, your founding guest. Thank you. It's a real privilege. So I think the first thing I have to clear up is that I didn't call myself a brand mama. Someone else did. In a period of consulting between Kulula and Hollard, I was helping a young entrepreneur with his brand. And he said, "What shall I call you? A marketing consultant?" And I was like, "Oh, the word consultant, I so don't like it." And he said, "I know what you are. You help give birth to brands. You're a brand mama." And it stuck. So just because it sounds like really, if you gave that name to yourself, that's big, high ego, not my cup of tea. So now we've cleared that up. I started my career out of school. I did a BSc in nursing, which absolutely has nothing to do with marketing. But what 17-year-old knows what they want to do with their lives? But I I love the human part of it, and I love the creativity part of it and the science part of it. I finished my degree at Wits. I nursed during it and slightly after it, and then the healthcare system was changing. It was difficult. And I ended up getting a job in a pharma market research company. And I loved it. I love to say I ran the market research department in a multinational pharma company. I was the only person in the market research department. But it was there that I watched one of the product managers, which I think they still call brand managers, product managers in pharma. I watched how in love she was with her brand. It was Dallas and C, an antibiotic. So dull. But Desiree Bierman, who I love, I learned so much from her. She had a big pinboard behind her with all her stuff for her brand. And I was like, one day, I'm going to love a brand like Desiree loves Dallas and C. And it just became a thing in my head. So what followed was quite a long career in market research. I worked for Partners in Research. I worked for another pharma multinational. I ended up at Markinor, which is now Ipsos. I was there for 12 years. And during that time, I got to specialize in brand positioning research, in customer experience and employee engagement research. I worked with just about every brand in the country, every sector from forklift trucks to medical aid. And then we sold to Ipsos, and it was time for a change. I ended up at Kulula with Gidon Novik, looking after Kulula, British Airways. We built the slow lounges, which was a dream project. And then I spent 12 years with topping and tailing of the dating and my consulting at the end at Hollard. And that's the précis of it. In between, I had got married. I'm still married. I have 2 grown-up sons, and that's the story.
Brilliant. Thanks, Heidi. I think the consulting brand mama, I think that's brilliant. It's distinctive. So it really stands out. And in this cluttered marketing environment, I definitely use that as much as I can. I just think it's such a great approach. So definitely use it. You've now recently moved from a very successful career in corporate to starting your own business venture. What made you decide after such a long time to become an entrepreneur?
So funny, because I hadn't thought of myself as an entrepreneur at all. I just thought of myself as making a change. And it was like with most change, for me especially, I kind of feel my way through it. And I had 10 plus one of dating, 11 really great years at Hollard. I was on my third CEO. There was more corporate change. And I don't know, but the fire wasn't in my eyes anymore. I was ready to try something new. I'm a startup and fix up person, not a maintenance person. Um, and Hollard, with all its partnership businesses and how we rebranded and brought it to life again, was a exciting and challenging space to be. But you get to a stage in your life where you're going, hold on, is there fire still in my belly? Am I being the best leader I can be? Am I being the most inventive? Do I feel like my brain is closing or opening? And all of those things, just a conversation with my CEO, who I'd been a colleague with for 7 years before he'd become the CEO. And he said, feels to me like you're not having fun anymore. I said, you know what? I'm not. And that was the beginning of making the change that maybe had been bubbling for a while. I think many of us don't listen to our gut. We're very linear. We think things happen linearly and sequentially, but sometimes they don't. They kind of bubble for a while, and then if you're paying attention, the moment presents itself. And if I love deeply, and I love the brands, and I put my whole self into the brands that I work with. And I couldn't just jump from one to another. And I thought, well, then I love to think with people. I love to share learnings at the stage of my life. Apparently, that's how our brains are wired best. And so it just happened. It just evolved.
And that leads us nicely onto one of the key components of what you do. You help founders and brand managers fall in love with their brands. Tell us a little bit more about that. How do you go about that?
You know, a part of this journey, as I said, I didn't have a plan. I was like, okay, I think I know the things I'll do. And luckily enough, I've been in the industry for a long time. And when I announced I was leaving, I had a couple of calls and people said, can you help with this? And can you help? I said, sure, I'll do anything to earn a living. Knowing that I would soon figure what did fit me well and what didn't fit me well. So I pretty much said yes to everything. And at some point, someone I really respect and value said, she said, hey, I know what you do, but if I have to tell people, I can't. So I called up Dean Ulshig from Halo, who I've been a partner in their business since the beginning. I said, Dino, I don't know how to tell people what I do. And he said, oh, hey, it's easy. You help people fall in love with their brands. I was like, oh, again, someone gifted me something so just delicious. And then I realized I do, because the thing, and I'm going to fling up some of my little illustrations. I've been around long enough to know that we all have to admit that there's nothing new under the sun. It literally comes from the Bible. And if you accept the fact that your product is probably equal or only marginally different to your competitors, even if it's new, it will only be new for 5 minutes till it gets copied, if it's any good. Then we have to build something for people to fall in love with. I'm well known for my cake metaphor, layering things so that you layer a parity product in layers of delicious brand, customer experience, and all of the passion that goes with it. But at the heart of it, it's trying to people who are so close to their businesses forget what makes it special. And I love to work with clients and brands, help open the box that's sitting on top of their heads, dig inside, put it all on the table, and try to find that little delicious thing that makes theirs different from everybody else's. And then you fall in love again. I'm working with a client now. I've known him for years, and we had lunch a few months ago. And after lunch, it wasn't a lunch to try and do business together. It was just catching up. And he said, I am actually, after 21 years, I'm getting excited about my brand again. And that's what we're doing together. Just like you forget what makes you special. And if you can articulate that, then you articulate that for all your team members in the business, then your agencies will fall in love again, then your customers will fall in love again, and that's good for business.
Excellent. That leads me on to one of your quotes that I really love. You say consumers aren't sitting around waiting to fall in love with your brand. So how do you kind of tie those two components together then? I just quickly want to give you a quote from Sarah Carter, Adam and Eve, DDB. She basically says, and I want to read this, Sisha Des said marketers placed a post-it note above their desk saying, consumers really don't give a shit. And people's indifference to brands and advertising should be the starting point. So the key component is, whilst you fall in love with your brand, your customer at this point in time is not sitting around waiting for you. They don't give it as much thought as you do. How do you bring those two components together?
So we're saying the same thing. They're not sitting around waiting for you. And if you can't be compelling, I mean, I always use the example of the dating apps. I've been married a long time, so I haven't actually ever been on one, but I have sons who go on them. The dating apps, just think about it. They are flooded with humans waiting to be connected. And actually, they're all functionally the same, right? But everybody's trying to stand out and be slightly distinctive so that quite literally, people can fall in love with them. Love might not be what everyone's after, but let's just keep it to that. And we have to humbly know that our businesses, our products. Listen, I've sold insurance for a dozen years. Airline sounds sexy, but it's the most grudge purchase. People hate the fact that they have to pay so much for such a simple thing. Market research, holy cow, no one wants that. But people, consumers, whether they're B2B or B2C, are literally being spammed and overrun with info, messaging, whatever. And they don't wake up every morning going, I'm waiting to fall in love with this brand. However, if you want to get them to pay for whatever you're offering, you have got to stand out. You have got to be distinctive, even if your product is not differentiated. And the humility that Sarah Carter's quote shows, and the same with my thing here, that says, if you are humble enough to appreciate that you sell the same shit as everybody else, then, and your consumers, adding to Sarah's, that consumers are not waking up every day to fall in love with you, then best you do your very best to find a way to stand out and to attract their attention, because they can be in love with you. People were in love with Kulula. They paid whatever, a little bit extra per ticket now and then, because they wanted to fly Kulula, no one else. It's an airplane with a seat and maybe something to eat and a toilet, and that was all. But they wanted to fly Kulula, and so on. So you can do it, but you have to start from a place of humility.
And I think that's a massive problem that a lot of marketers have, and I suppose new business owners, is that place of humility. Now, a key component that you've talked about is that differentiation of distinctiveness. And for you, it started with your marketing research and in pharmaceutical. What did you learn about research and being able to identify that little something, be customer obsessed and market orientated? What did that teach you that you can give to other marketers that actually gives you the thing that's going to make you so different or distinctive?
Well, the first thing is, years ago I wrote a quote when I realized I was speaking. It's the second time I've told it this week. I'm rambling. The quote was created after I was presenting at a market research conference. I was on day 2, and everybody started with a quote of what market research meant. And I thought, holy cow, if I don't stand out from this crowd, Markino is not going to be remembered, and neither will I. So I made up my own, and I made some really chunky quote that said, definition that said, it's the money you spend on market research in this, because if you don't use the budget in this calendar year, you'll lose it, to find out what consumers think about you, although you think you already know, which you'll never read, and one day you'll dust it off and use it to lift the PC projector to the right height or keep the door open, as the case may be. And people said, how can you start a presentation with that? And in fact, we started every proposal or pitch with that too. And I was like, it will keep us honest, and it will keep our clients sharp to make sure that they don't buy research like that. I tell you, having insight from the customer's point of view, that's my other mantra, FTC POV, from the customer's point of view, is the biggest gift you can give yourself. You think you know, and we'll talk about a story, I think, where that came out for me in my own experience as a CMO. But I'll tell you one little thing that I saw in every single customer experience piece of research I did, whether it was from trucking equipment to banking and everything in between, is that when you allow the statistics to do the correlations for you, price is never a key driver of loyalty. Never, ever, ever, ever. Full stop. And the bullshit that people believe about that. I mean, I even remember in focus groups when I was still doing healthcare research, the client would say, oh, the doctors won't prescribe XYZ because they say it's too expensive. And you sit in a room full of doctors and you ask them why they don't prescribe it. You don't ask them why they don't. But anyway, and then they tell you they don't prescribe, it's too expensive. Then you ask them to tell you how much it costs. They got no idea. It is never. And if I said to you, is the Mercedes expensive? You'd say yes. If I said, is the quality high? Yes. Is the value high? Yes. It's a little sacred triangle, and the triangle always wins. So
that completely aligns, I suppose, with something that Mark Ritson always says. He always talks about diagnosis, then strategy, and then tactics. So you speaking exactly that language, and it's the right approach. Now, you tell
that's
a
my
really good
version of it.
story.
Business
There you go.
objectives, then brand objectives, then marketing objectives. Exactly the same.
Absolutely. 100%, completely aligned. Then you tell a really good story about how you joined ComAir and you convinced Gideon Novick right up front to spend quite what you mentioned, quite a sizable sum of money on market research. How did you convince him to do that, and what was the outcome? And how could other marketers learn from that?
Well, yeah, I hadn't even joined yet, actually. I was joining in the Jan. We were having a coffee before we all went on holiday at the end of the year. So I said to him, just by the way, I'm getting quotes to do a piece of brand positioning research. And he said, hey, don't worry, you don't have to do that. I'll tell you everything you need to know about the brand. And I nicely said, thank you, about to be my boss, but I need more than a sample of one. Thank God I did. I clearly, obviously didn't say it like that, but I don't know how I persuaded him. But I did. And thank God we did it. We were working with King James at the time. They were the incumbent agency. And we got this piece of beautiful brand tracker using a model called Optima. It was gorgeous. And lo and behold, we found what we didn't know, which was that, as it will happen, remember when I said to you, there's nothing new under the sun, and even if you've got some, you'll be copied. That's what had happened. Kulula had come into a market that was all about full service airlines, legacy, heritage, all of that stuff. And they'd upended it magnificently. Now anyone can fly was the payoff line. Everyone can still sing the jingle. Cheeky, cheaper, cheerful, challenging. I didn't plan that, but it worked brilliantly. But they'd been copied. They're all gone now. Mango, one time, nationwide, they'd all copied the Kulula model. And when you looked at the map, the Optima map, which was a three-dimensional sphere statistically, which got squished into a two-dimensional page, the legacy heritage brands, full service, were all together in a lump, drawn by those attributes, and the low-cost, fun, and so on carriers were on the other side, drawn by those attributes. And where was Kulula? Not up there. It was dangling in the middle. And if you'll imagine that they're sort of magnetically pulled by the reasons for choice, Kulula was not being magnetically pulled by anything. It wasn't in the middle by intention. It wasn't in the middle because it had strategically positioned itself there. It was in the middle because it had lost its distinctiveness, because it had been copied. And, what's that expression about best form of I can't think of it now, but being copied. Sat there as a team and looked at this. I remember the meeting going, oi, being heartbroken, allowing the pain to infuse, and then going, right, now what do we do? And we chose to reposition. Actually, we chose to claim a space that no one had and to be a hybrid in this country so that we were more not there, but rather here. And it worked. But if we hadn't done the research and we didn't have that from the customer's point of view, sample of 384, statistically significant, we wouldn't have known.
Absolutely. And let that, I suppose, be a lesson to all marketers is do your research so you can see how you're going to reposition yourself and be distinctive.
Yeah.
So if diagnosis then provides a map of the territory, then strategy is a set of coherent actions that help you conquer that territory. So I love a quote, and I'm going to read again. Sorry, I'm big on quotes. But strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and tactics without strategy are the noise before defeat. That's from Sun Tzu. So then you are also famously known, and I think this is your quote, because everybody is doing it, it doesn't make it a strategy, exactly what you mentioned earlier with regard to Kulula. So the question then is, in your opinion, what does a good strategy look like? You've done this great diagnosis. How do you now translate that into a strategy?
I don't know if I said that. If I did, this very clever and well done to me, or well done to whoever said it. But it's so interesting because I'm seeing more and more in the work I'm doing now, and I'm engaging with so many different businesses. It's just joy in my eyes. But I say that strategy is, well, first of all, I think strategy has become a word that terrifies everybody. Strategy is in the domain of the strategist, which is the biggest load of rubbish. In fact, I once gave a talk called Strategists Are Dead, Long Live Strategy. Not because I don't believe in strategists, because I think we outsource our thinking to strategists and agencies, and we don't hold any ownership ourselves. So the first thing is that strategy is for everybody. The second thing that if we just simplify what strategy is, I've got a diagram somewhere, but I won't rummage through all 300 of my slides, of a little boat. And really, strategy is knowing to where your ship is sailing. Where are you going? Are you going across a small river, a lake, open sea? If you're going across a lake, what vessel do you need to get there? You can't go on a raft, you can't go on a little dinghy. You'll need something more substantial. What crew do you need? What supplies do you need? And then knowing exactly where you're going to get to, where you're going to start from, and knowing that if winds come, still staying on course. When you get blown off, everybody knows where you're going still. And that's what strategy is knowing where you're going and what you need to get there and what you'll do when you get blown off course, because you'll get blown off course. So that's the second thing, is that. The third thing is marketing strategy or brand strategy, whichever we're dealing with, has to be linked to the business strategy. And that is where I think marketers are failing to the largest degree. They are not au fait enough with business strategy, the business objectives. Oftentimes can't talk the business language. And then they don't allow their agencies to become as close to that as they are, or as they should be in a perfect world. So first, the business objectives. Second, democratizing strategy so that everybody has access to it and understands it. And starting, sometimes my clients will phone me and they'll say, what do you think of this particular post or something? And I'm saying, dude, you're starting me here. Can you give me context? What's it supposed to do? And not only what's it supposed to do from a marketing point of view, what's its business job? And if we're oriented in the world of business, then we are likely to get the budgets. We know what to measure, because nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything, content, is in context. Everything exists in the context of something else. And I think we could just make our lives so much easier and more exciting as marketers. And I'll tell you, I sound like I'm bitching about marketers, but I sat in a room of probably 30 marketers in a team meeting a few years ago, and I asked them all, what the gross written premium was of one of the business units. And if there were 30 in there, I got 30 different responses. Now I know that's my fault and my leader's fault and the marketer's fault for not asking. But as marketing leaders, we have to democratize strategy and access to business information.
Thank you, Heidi. I suppose the simplest form of strategy, just from my perspective and the way I've learned it, is strategy comes down to three components. It's essentially your target market, who you selected, what your positioning is, and then what your objectives are, exactly to your point. And I suppose that's really as simple as it is. There's a lot of complexity behind that, but that's really what it comes down to. And then you raise a really, really important point is, how do you take strategy and communicate it to the C-suite? And what type of language do you use when you actually do that so that they understand it? They'd say, we want to be number one in the airline industry, or we want to raise profits from 15% to 20% by the end of the year. How should marketers look at that and translate that into a marketing strategy? Because that in and of itself is a business strategy, but it doesn't make sense for marketing.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that's not enough. That's not enough information, right? That's like going to the doctor and the doctor says, your temperature's high. It's not enough information. We need to look in your ears and listen to your heart and check your throat and all of those things. So there's more data points in order to make a diagnosis and then prescribe a treatment. Think about it. Let's go to, say, at airlines. Think about a pilot in a flying a jet will never say, oh, the altitude, only measure altitude. She is going to say, let's look at wind speed and weather conditions and fuel amount and so on, and then compute what the best way is to handle the rest of the journey. And we have to do the same thing as marketers. We are not order takers. We don't sit there with our pen and our notebook and say, you want what? I must answer this one question, or I must make you a billboard, or I must make you I must make you get from 15% market share to 20%. No, I'm your partner in this journey. I'm just going to say it again. We are not order takers. We are partners. We have to understand the business of the business. We have to understand what's keeping our business partners awake at night. And this is a new thing I'm going to add to that. On an ongoing basis, on a continuous basis, your engagement can't start when they need you. You should be engaging all the time with these business partners. And those that know me, I'm famous for going for walk and talks. I am famous for the notion of an agendaless meeting. I love the way I'm saying I'm famous, but anyway, I say it a lot. Having agendaless meetings. What's an agendaless meeting? A meeting where you say, Philip, as a key stakeholder in my life, I would like to see you every month for 45 minutes. What's the agenda? No, the agenda is me understanding the business of your business so that I can be proactive for you. And if I'm doing that with all the key stakeholders across the business, then I can, when I meet you, I can say, you know what, Phil, actually, Mary said the same thing the other day. And actually, I wonder if we couldn't, the gifts you bring your business partners are bountiful when you have proactive agendaless meetings. When you understand the business, you might talk rubbish for 40 of the 45 minutes, but I promise you there's always a gem. And the other thing you do in those 45 minutes or an hour, whatever, 20 minutes if you can get it, is you socialize and you teach them. Because the biggest problem is that we don't speak the same language. And then we appear at an exco with a concept and we vomit marketing speak at them and they don't understand us. My first CEO at Hollard, Nick Kohler, I had coffee with him yesterday. He used to say to me, don't divide and conquer. But it wasn't. It's called persuading and influencing. I would meet all of the exco members before I had a big something to show, so that I could hear and utilize their views in the process of making the pitch or the proposal better. so that when I got in the room, I could say, "Oh, Sarah, I know you said that you thought that, but I haven't heard that from anyone else, so I'm going to keep that on the burner. You just are in front of challenges, not behind them." So what language should you use when engaging the C-suite? You need to speak each other's language, and you need to flip and repeat yourself over and over again. Because when you walk out, they forget about you. You have to be proactive and repeat yourself and not be an order taker.
So if I hear you correctly, it really comes down to customer relationships and actually having an interest in the business.
Yes.
And I suppose it comes back to the one thing that we said earlier. It's you continue to do market research because your stakeholders are your customers, and you're just finding out those little golden gems and know exactly where to hit the nail.
Yep. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Otherwise you just isolated. Everyone always says marketing is a service, part of the business, and we cost and we whatever. Oh, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Show that you aren't, because otherwise you just will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's a much more rich, generative, satisfying day when you are a partner.
Excellent. Now, a question for you. You've now got your marketing objectives. How many should you have? Should you go for everything and try and do everything that all your business units and C-suite want? How do you bring that back?
Yeah, we're just preparing now for to receive some market research back for one of my clients, and we deciding how we're going to present it back to the exco and the shareholders. And I said, I learned this at a course I did at business school, where the guy that taught us about performance coaching and performance management, he's a performance coach to sports people. He said there are only 3 places on the podium because people can't remember more than 3 things. And actually, it's true. It's true. So I was saying to my clients, let's just go back to why we're doing this. We're doing this because we want to get a baseline for our marketing activities going forward so that we can measure return on investment. We want to check awareness of ourselves, our brand, and positioning of our competitors, ourselves vis-a-vis our competitors, back to that content and context little drawing. That's all. I said, we are going to be blown away, because it's basically a usage and attitude study. We're going to be blown away and overwhelmed with the quantum of stuff that's coming back. We have to zoom up, and we have to make sure that we don't have too many. And the same with business objectives, marketing objectives, comms objectives, whatever they might be. Sharon Keith, who's just recently left Heineken also to consult, and I did a talk at the WPP Stream conference last year about what's happening with marketing and advertising. Why we're not winning awards, we're not doing great work anymore. And we talked about it from the agency side and from the client side. And we talked about this 3 to 5 things. And this quiet voice inside the room, actually we were on a little barge on the Vaal, but anyway, it wasn't a room even. This little voice said, my clients got 8 to 10 objectives per campaign. And I could hear her just going, that's ridiculous. And everyone in the room just realized that you just lose the plot. I mean, actually, where are you sailing to? Does it matter if you stop at this island? Does it matter if the boat tipples over and you lose half your... You just can't. You just need fewer. You need max 3 primary objectives. Finished.
And when we say max 3, it's max 3. It's not 3 plus 2, because there's always scope creep, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I say always, you have to keep the main thing. Like,
Absolutely.
Finished. That's it. And if the aliens took the strategist, you should all be able to describe what the main thing is, right?
Absolutely.
If the strategist's laptop dies, or remember in the days of those transparencies when they used to fall out your hands as you walked into the meeting and they were in the wrong order and all of that. If all that goes down, it doesn't matter, because you can say, and anyone in your team can say, what the three things are.
Perfect. Thanks, Heidi. Now, that just kind of leads us on to marketing metrics. And one of the latest stats that I heard is there are over 200 metrics that you can measure in marketing. Which marketing metrics are most important for you in managing a brand or your marketing objectives and business success?
Let me answer it by telling you a little bit of a story. So every marketer should try and get the opportunity to judge marketing awards, whether it's as a junior juror or as a entry first round juror, whatever you can do. And if I can help you at all, you must yell. Because there's nothing like seeing other people's work legally and confidentially, but you realize how bad probably your own storytelling of your own work is when you see other people's. Here's how it goes. It goes that people say, our campaign was to sell more pencils. Often they don't say how many pencils they wanted to sell, but they had this idea to sell more pencils. Good, okay. Then they'll show you the work to sell the pencils, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's beautiful! What a great ad! It's so brilliant!" And then when they tell you the return on marketing investment, or the ROI, or the effectiveness, they head straight into the easy peasy ones, which are all the digital metrics. We got 40 gajillion impressions. Our cost per click was this. Our click-through rate was this. Our view-through rate was that. And I'm like, how many pencils did you sell? So actually, I can't tell you what marketing metric's the most important because I don't know what the business objective is. That's the short answer. However, I will say the following in addition. Peter Drucker is always misquoted, including by me on purpose, as saying, you can't manage what you don't measure, or you can't manage what you can't measure. Actually, he's misquoted, so it doesn't matter. But the point is, everyone was like, well, we can measure all this digital stuff, and isn't that fantastic? So that's the only part of your campaign that you know it's really working. It's the digital, because you can measure it. I have bastardized it, and I've said, you can't only do what you can measure. Some things are very hard to measure, but you don't not do TV. And Mark Ritson, again, we'll talk about him a lot probably today, will tell you TV's still the thing, really. You want to reach, go on TV. TV's still a thing, outdoor's still a thing, actually print is even still a thing, smaller thing, but it's still a thing. Consumers are 360 beings. They are not only digital beings. And when you are being bombarded by so much stuff, I'm reminded of Tom Cruise in Minority Report. Remember when he walked through the city and they were saying, Mr. Cruise, do you want this hamburger? Mr. Cruise, this fragrance is just for you. That is our life right now. It is our life. And if you want to break through the clutter, you have to have distinctiveness and you have to be where your consumers are, which may not be in measurable places. Because at the end of the day, attribution is not as easy as you think it is. Everyone thinks that click, that last click is responsible, is the gift that was given to us, and the only thing that made the consumer make that purchase. It's not true. The consumer drove past your billboard. The consumer was making tea but heard your ad. The consumer's driving to work and heard your ad. The consumer's mom told them about it. The consumer's book club where they were drinking lots of wine spoke about it. All of these things. And so you have to measure both the hard to measure and the easy to measure. That's why we do brand trackers, so that we can see the cumulative impact of all of these things. But just don't forget to keep the main thing the main thing. How many pencils did you sell? Impressions are great. They're vanity metrics. But what was the point?
Suppose it all comes down again to the diagnosis that you do up front, knowing exactly what you want to achieve, what the outcome is, and how you're going to measure that. Now, a key component then is, how do you sell things that you can't measure to your CEO? I know we are over-reliant on these digital measures, and we've kind of created a problem for ourselves because this is how we measure and what we've said for so many years, but that's not how it actually being measured. How do
Yeah.
you now take a different message to your CEO and say, wait a minute, these things are important, but
Yeah.
there's this little thing called the brand, and it's actually a lot more important than this is how it comes back in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you quote people wiser than yourself. So let's talk about Mr. Ritson again, Professor Ritson. So we were lucky enough to have had him speak at Halo's Conspicuous Conference last year. And I sat there going, yes, 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 and yes, holy hallelujah. But he had data to back up all the stuff that I've learned over the years and my gut knows to be true. And I was trying to find a little chart to show you, but I can't find it and I don't want to rummage anymore. But there is data to show that you have to spend money on both brand and performance. And it comes,
Yes.
Mark quotes the long and the short of it, which is Peter Fields and Les Binet. There's a whole book written on it that shows that sales uplift over time. If you're only doing performance marketing, you get a peak and a drop, a peak and a drop, a peak and a drop. You don't get any cumulative uplift. If you do brand work, it's slower, but it is continuous cumulative uplift. And so the bottom line is you have to do both. And if you look at the big advertisers, if you look at Mark shows example of McDonald's globally, there is always something in market that is brand, and there's always something in market that's buy a hamburger, buy chips, buy 2 for 1, whatever. You have to do both. And the truth is, there's also data, and it's all available. You can ping me or I'll make it available to you, that shows that, in fact, in some sectors, like financial services, if you're going to split your budget, you must split your budget 80, 20, 80 brand, and only 20 on performance. What? Yes. Because people don't wake up every morning going, I think I'm going to change my bank today. It is a longer book. You have to do the long and the short. And you have to teach your CEO. You can't do that if you only rock up at his or her doorstep when you need something or when you summoned, like an order. You have to teach in a credible way and use the wisdom of others, like Peter Fields and Les Binet and Mark Ritson and other people. There's data all over the place.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll include all that in the show notes. For the record, I'm a massive Mark Ritson fan. I've been on a lot of his conferences, so we'll give him a bit of a free plug, but it's definitely worth it. It will help marketers just get to the next level. That leads us nicely to a metaphor of yours. It takes a village to raise a brand. What does that mean?
My husband always says, don't you mean a child? And I say, yes, and a brand. But the same way as you don't leave your kid at school on the 10th of Jan or whenever it is and say, cheers, I'll see you in December. You raise your child with the whole village, the teachers, the other parents, any caregivers you have, and. And the best way for that child to be raised as holistically, consistently as is if everybody knows that child as well as everybody else. So it's like if you know that your child wants to do knitting and not rugby, and you don't share that with the school, and the school shoves the child in the rugby team, we've got a problem. And it's the same with the brand. You have to, as the brand mama or papa, you have to make sure that everybody who is raising that brand child has as much knowledge of the brand and the business as you do. so that they can be part of that village of raising that brand. It is, you hold in your hand something really important, because it's the thing, it's a thing that the staff have to be motivated and inspired by, the shareholders, media, regulatory bodies, consumers, suppliers, everybody. And making sure that it's consistent and living its best life cannot only be the marketing departments, it has to be everybody generating that together. And I find, back to those awards, sometimes we say, oh, so how many pencils did you sell? The client won't tell us. How does that work, agency? Poor agency. Poor agency, or did agency not even ask? But that's what I mean when I say it takes a village to raise a brand, because everybody has to have that child or that brand's best interest at heart. Everybody has to be fully subscribed to the well-being of that brand. And you then can make magic, even if you have a little money to spend.
So just an important question on that. The likes of Coca-Cola, Unilever, P&G, they are all brand led. Their village elders all buy into the brand, and it's the most important thing there is. But I've also found that with some organizations, some of the village elders kind of knock marketing as a coloring department. Can you convince the village elders that brand is important, or is it a question of, if everybody's not going to play a role here, we're actually not going to succeed? How do you manage that? It's just, I've experienced that before, and it's always a difficult or a conundrum to work through.
Well, I think not everything is binary. In fact, nothing's binary. It's not either or. There's brand led and, I want to say accountant led, for want of two extremes. But there's a million little points on the way. So, if you find yourself in an organization that is engineer, I had actuaries, accountants, and engineers up the yin yang. Okay, that's what our population was. Go and find an insurance brand or any brand more in love with the brand. I challenge you. Those those actuaries, engineers, and accountants learned how to love a brand by being taught what a brand is and having it repeated. So you're either in a brand-led organization, in a cold-hearted, functional, non-caring organization, but you can always shift them. You can always shift by teaching. I'm not saying I arrived then it was cold-hearted and they didn't care about brands, because they always did. But I don't believe it's impossible at all, because actually every CEO or C-suite crew are consumers too. And when you point out their logo on their jersey, or which phone they use, or which smartwatch they prefer, they soon realize how much brands matter to them. And it's useful to take them out of their category, whether they're selling chocolates or cars or plants or whatever, and say, just think about yourself as a consumer. And when they realize how much brands matter, you're already starting to win.
So to your point earlier, if you've got the right approach and the right strategy, and you can help them fall in love with the brands, they do. You just need to approach it from the right perspective.
Yeah.
Heidi, I think we're starting to run a little bit short of time. I'd like to ask you, there's one thing that you talk about a lot, and I think marketers get very bored of their creative. So in today's world, we have marketing and creative upon creative and creative, and it just, you've got a different approach to that.
Yeah.
Please share that with us.
I do, and I'm dying to show it to you, except I put it to one side and now I can't find it. But picture this, the word repeat on a page, repeated over and over and over again. That is how you build a brand. Repeat. And when you are sick of it, repeat again. Again, there is data that is out now that we can also put into the notes that shows that 30,000? Were there 30,000 pieces of creative? I'm so bad
Pretty
at
much
numbers.
30,000, correct, yes.
30,000 pieces of creative that had been live for an extended period of time, different for all of them. You know how many pieces wore out? 14. 14. Wear out is much longer and slower than you think. And just because of because you as a marketer are sick of your creative doesn't mean you change it. You know, it goes back to this thing from the beginning about humility. Is you have to humbly remember that even if you are flouting because you've got tons of money like Coca-Cola or whoever else, consumers have only seen your thing a couple of times. Just give it a chance to settle in. You will get better ROI when the recognizability is there, but also you have to do great creative, right? You have to touch people somewhere.
Absolutely.
It can't be awful.
Yeah, one of the most successful adverts, and it's often quoted, is actually Coca-Cola, who have been running their Coca-Cola Christmas advert for 25 years.
Yeah.
Now, just imagine the amount of money that you're saving on creative and reinvesting that on media to get reach. And after 25, people still have the advert. So I love your approach to repeat.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Heidi. For someone who wants to get more information, how can they follow you or how can they get in touch?
So I am in process of building my website, which hopefully will be ready shortly. But in the meantime, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Heidi as in lady, Heidi, and Brauer, Brauer. I'm there, and I'm on Instagram, literally as Heidi as in lady. And I'd love to hear from you.
Cheers, Heidi. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone that listened to Multiplicative Marketing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And thank you very much, Heidi.